Sonic the Hedgehog is a gaming icon for both the right and wrong reasons.
Meow?
Often the laughingstock of the gaming community, most people forget that Sonic was actually good. Or maybe, just maybe, he was never bad. Okay, so maybe he has fallen off a few times. The Sonic franchise has definitely been one to take risks over the years, with some of these paying off and others not so much. Which we'll get to in due time, believe me. Every series has to start somewhere though, and for Sonic, that was in 1991 with Sonic 1. I'm sure you all know the story of how and why Sonic was created, so I'm not going to dwell on it for too long. The only thing I will say is that despite being created as a competitor to Mario, the Sonic games are completely different in terms of gameplay and presentation. They are completely different games, which is why comparing them would be a dumb idea, and I'm not gonna do that. Sonic is totally better though. I think it's somewhat worth mentioning that for years I was a massive fan of this series, and in a way I still am, hence why I've decided to play through the majority of them for the channel. When I say massive fan though, I mean it. Maybe not as crazy into the series as others, but I had my fair share of action figures, graphic novels, cringy stop motion videos on YouTube, and I was even active on a Sonic forum many years ago. But with that out of the way, let's get started with Sonic 1. You start up the game for the first time and are thrown into Green Hill Zone, one of, if not the most iconic level in the series, even if it has been overused in recent years. Immediately you can start moving and jumping, and you'll quickly find yourself building up speed. This can be combined with rolling down hills and ledges to go even faster as you collect rings to stay alive and power-ups to give you an advantage such as a shield or invincibility. The faster you go and the timing of your jumps throughout the levels can lead to hidden pathways and items as well. In a very short period of time, the game tells you literally everything you need to know. Rings are good, robots are bad. You can run through loops to gain speed and look awesome. Seriously, it's so satisfying. Springs can propel you upwards or along, but sometimes they're placed in bad spots to either send you the wrong way or into a trap. In just 45 seconds you've made your way through the very first level and already you know how to play Sonic. At this point you're practically a professional Sonic the Hedgehog player, until you reach Act 2 and the spikes kill you. Not so easy now, is it, bitch? At the end of each act, provided you have at least 50 rings, you can enter a special stage. Not only are these extremely trippy, they're also a pain in the ass. If you can complete the stage successfully, you'll be rewarded with a Chaos Emerald. More on those later. Regardless of whether you get the Emerald or you hit the goal balls, you lying fuckers, you go on to the next level as normal. At the end of the third act of every zone, you fight Fat Fuck Eggman to free the animals he's been kidnapping. Everyone knows that the first boss in this game is super easy, and I'm sure practically anybody could beat it without taking any damage. Moving on. I'm not going to be going through the game on a level by level basis, however, we do need to talk about Marble Zone for a quick second. This is the second zone in the game that you visit, and it's a massive departure from Green Hill. The open levels built for speed and exploration are gone. Instead, the zone consists largely of corridors and slow moving platforms you have to avoid being crushed by. Sure, there are a few secret items hidden away and one or two substantial shortcuts, but in comparison to Green Hill it just feels so slow. I'm not saying that Sonic has to be super fast all the time or anything, but the first zone gives you the impression that the game is fast, only for the second zone to strip that away from you, instead giving you block puzzles and basic platforming over lava. It's not a bad level by any means, but it definitely makes the game feel a little inconsistent. Now, seeing as you couldn't really tell a story on the Mega Drive other than using text boxes, Sonic Team had to get creative. Now there is a story in the instruction manual, but I want to appreciate the visual storytelling here. The game starts off in a natural environment, filled with trees and grass with a slight hint of an outside influence as robotic animals roam the lands and rivers, along with spikes being placed where land probably once was. Then as you reach the end of the zone, you find a strange, egg-looking man in a floating chair that tries to kill you. Presumably he's responsible for what's happened here. As you venture forward, the land becomes more and more deadly, the last zone being a factory. The fact that you see all of this in the game without a single word of dialogue is amazing, and whilst games released in later years such as Crash Bandicoot would do a similar thing but better, Sonic was the one that did it first. Something I didn't immediately start the video with but definitely deserves mentioning is that for the sake of the video, I'm playing the American or NTSC version of the game. The reason for this being that the PAL version of this game is so ridiculous ridiculously slow that it feels unplayable. The overall gameplay is slower, the music is slowed right down, so it's basically ruined as far as I'm concerned. The only thing not wrong with this version is the visual presentation. It still looks like the same game. I don't want to get too technical with this stuff as I don't know everything, and I also don't wish to get anything wrong, but if you're looking for a more technical breakdown on this, I'd recommend watching a video by Red Hot Sonic on this subject. If you've only ever played the PAL version of the game, I'd suggest you play the NTSC version going forwards. Speaking of going forwards, Sonic isn't as simple as just going from left to right. In fact, a lot of the game involves going up and down, which leads to some interesting level design. Stuff like the slide in Labyrinth Zone and the massive half pipes all over Scrap Brain exist due to the inclusion of vertical gameplay. Speaking of Labyrinth Zone, fuck this level! Out of all the stages in the game, this is by far the hardest. I think that everybody hates water levels subconsciously, but there's more to hate in this stage than just the water. For starters, we have the insane amount of spikes and platforms that exist only to crush you, enemies that you have to wait for an opening to attack, meaning you waste more time underwater, and to top it all off, the slide. I don't really get this. Sometimes I just kind of do it with no issue, and other times I get stuck for ages. To me, Labyrinth Zone is the opposite of what I like about Sonic levels. It's slow, it's filled with death, and it's underwater. The game does follow a pattern in the zones. Speed, platforming, speed, aids, speed, platforming, aids again, goddammit, why? These fuckers make you come back here for round 4 because fuck you, am I right? But after you do battle your way through, you get greeted with the ominous words of Final Zone. Huh, that was kinda easy. This right here is why you need to get the Chaos Emeralds from the special stages, if you can be bothered to anyway. Instead of seeing Eggman's smug shiny head juggling, you get rewarded with this. Not really worth it in my opinion, but a fun challenge to say that you actually did it. And that is Sonic 1. Almost. A re-release of the game on iOS and Android was released in 2013, and with that came the addition of the Spin Dash, a staple of later titles in the series, and Tails and Knuckles as playable characters. Another substantial re-release of the game was last year on the Switch with the slight rebranding of Sega Ages Sonic the Hedgehog. This version adds the Drop Dash from Mania and an arcade mode similar to Sonic 1 arcade cabinets. If any of those features interest you, then I'd recommend going with one of those versions. Overall, Sonic 1 is a fun but somewhat short experience that would lay the foundation that the series would continue to build upon in future installments. So join me next time as we take a look at Sonic the Hedgehog 2.